I don't know how to describe what I'm about to tell you. It's something, much of what people say about the supernatural, that many would decide not to believe. I spent years not believing it, until I lived it. Very close friends of mine swore they were telling the truth when they told me what they saw. And then I literally watched them run out of my house, scared to death. This story begins in my grandmother's house. When my grandfather died, both of them were almost 70. My grandmother decided to have her cousin Mercedes move in with her. This aunt never married, so, since I was a child, my memories of my grandmother's place are also memories of Aunt Mercedes, someone who terrified me. She was always dressed in black, in permanent mourning for her parents, even though my mother and my aunts insisted she was the most beautiful person. I never could look at her without fear. I always remembered her watching me from a distance, at the end of a corridor, from the other side of the house, or from the window while I played in the yard. She never scolded me. We barely talked beyond greetings. But I always had the feeling she was waiting for me to make a mistake so she could start yelling. A few years later, Aunt Mercedes died. I remember the fear that made me want to get closer. I was already 14 years old when I asked to see her body in the coffin. My mother allowed it, and she also agreed that I wouldn't have to attend the funeral. She sent me to my grandmother's house instead, where there were a few of the youngest cousins, children who didn't want the funeral atmosphere around them. That night, I had a dream. I entered the funeral home looking for my mother or my grandmother, but I didn't find anyone. I walked until I reached the room where they were viewing Aunt Mercedes. When I stepped inside, the room was completely empty. Somehow that gave me courage. I remember thinking, maybe I already sensed it was a dream. Then, as I took a few steps, the coffin shifted slightly. The long, skinny fingers of the right hand of Aunt Mercedes began to push through the lid, gripping at the edge as if she were about to sit up. I turned to run, but I ran straight into closed doors. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't open them. And then, behind me, there was a loud sound. I turned back to the coffin. It was on the floor now, empty. I woke up with a fever. I don't remember much more. I was in bed for several days. In my family, we never believed in ghosts, not really. We enjoyed the stories, sure, but we treated them as just stories. When my grandmother told us that Aunt Mercedes walked down the hallways, we thought it was just meant to scare us, someone's imagination swelling into something bigger and bigger. Until we all heard her. That day there were almost 8 of us visiting my grandmother. My mother, 2 aunts, 1 uncle, and some cousins. When someone mentioned Aunt Mercedes, we froze as we heard Aunt Mercedes laugh, flooding the house from the 2nd floor. The 2nd floor was empty, except for the baby asleep in one of the rooms. It was my Uncle Julian who recovered first. He ran upstairs to the baby and quickly brought him down, handing him to his mother. My grandmother was the least surprised. She had already told us that after Aunt Mercedes died, she was still in the house. None of us had believed her, until that moment. After that, my grandmother was never alone in the house again. I remember a particular day when I stayed with her. I played with a ball outside while my grandmother sat in a chair under a tree, weaving. Without meaning to, I sent the ball into a rosebush and broke a large branch covered with roses. My grandmother told me nothing happened, but she came to pick up the broken roses. When she returned, I turned toward the house, and I saw Aunt Mercedes. She was in the usual window, watching me as if she were about to jump for me. When I was in high school, my grandmother died. The house passed to my mother, and then to me. We moved in together, trying to honor her memory and also the presence of Aunt Mercedes as much as we could. Later, when I was in college and we had group work, I always tried to receive my classmates with a ghost story about Aunt Mercedes. She lived upstairs, and the story helped break the ice, except I didn't want anyone to feel too comfortable. I wanted to prevent them. One girl I had just started dating climbed to the second floor to use the upstairs bathroom. When she came back down, she told me the old woman in black had put a terrible scare into her. She said she should have warned him that there were more people in the house. We let her go. No need to explain that she really had seen something. Not that day. After that, I kept preventing visitors. I made sure to be serious and prepared them for the footsteps in the corridor, for the doors of the rooms closing, so that the bathroom doors wouldn't suddenly swing open while they were not expecting it. And it didn't always work. One time, a boyfriend of a classmate came by to help us with a job. He was a little older than her and everyone else, and whenever he could, he'd act like we were young and inexperienced, like he was mature and knowledgeable about everything we were talking about. When Aunt Mercedes became the topic, he started mocking us. So I told him to go upstairs and mind himself. After all, the house was empty at night, and he wouldn't be bothering anyone. He went upstairs. Not long after, when I realized it was Aunt Mercedes' room, I told him. He went down very shortly after, smiling, but pale. I kept insisting it was imagination. Later, in the kitchen, he approached me to say he was sure he had seen a woman in the corner of the room. In the dark, with her back pressed as if she were charging her forehead against the wall. Floating. I told him I couldn't bear to even imagine seeing that, because I hadn't seen it myself. Then we heard laughter from upstairs. We all went to the upstairs room where our things were. When we gathered together, a laugh seemed to seal our blood, like it was locking us in. And then we heard steps coming down the stairs. I need to say this clearly. Those steps weren't something we usually heard. Aunt Mercedes didn't dare to go down. Not until that moment. Before I could react, my classmates ran out of the house, leaving almost everything behind. They called me minutes later saying a friend would stop by in the morning to help me take my things to school. And it was then that I understood. Not even the skeptical boyfriend wanted to go back in for his backpack, or for his girlfriend's bag. It was the last time we ever worked at my home. I do believe it's possible to live with these presences, though it comes with fear. That's how we adapted. That's my story.